Hey, everybody, hope you all are doing well, and welcome back to Michael's Matters. Now, as per usual, I'm Michael, and as far as this week goes, it's been pretty interesting so far. We had President Biden from the elevated platform of the State of the Union defend retirement programs like Medicare and Social Security programs, so more specifically, Social Security Retirement, as well as Social Security Disability SSDI and Supplemental Security Income SSI, and he defended them from GOP attacks as well has kind of scored some cheap political points in the process. Furthermore, with the tax season full in swing, the IRS is issuing long overdue back payments to some Americans who had not been refunded the right amount of their own money back from their unemployment benefits all the way back from 2020. And then lastly, in an attempt to avoid having this whole thing happen again, the IRS is asking some people who got state specific stimulus checks, like here in California, the Middle Class Tax Refund, to just wait just a couple moments here before they file their taxes until the IRS can sort out if these stimulus checks are actually going to be taxable or not at the federal level. Now, if you like these videos, if you find them interesting, if you find them helpful, hey, you know what? If you find them useful, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And that way you can get updates when our newest and most informative videos become available. All right, now, let's get down to the video. So let's start this video off with a big blow to the members of the GOP, or the Republican Party, who have been hoping to try to find ways to cut down on federal spending, and previously primarily through reducing entitlement programs, which included programs like Social Security and Medicare, again, previously. This week, at his State of the Union speech, the, State of the Union SOTU, if you make it short, SOTU, doesn't sound as good. President Biden directly said,
instead of making the wealthy pay their fair share, some Republicans want Medicare and Social Security to sunset.
Now, although he didn't directly name any names specifically in his speech, he was definitely alluding to members of the GOP like Rick Scott out of Florida, a Republican, who previously had proposed that federal programs be subject to cancellation unless they were reauthorized every few years, in fact, 5 years. Now, besides this being an epically bad idea to have to renew every 5 years, I mean, it would be basically like trying to convince your wife that your marriage would automatically expire unless you renewed your vows every 5 years. And I can only imagine what that negotiation would look like. But moreover, it's a bad idea because it would put essential programs like Social Security and Medicare in danger of being ended, in danger of being gutted, or possibly being changed so dramatically that really either Republicans or Democrats, whoever were in power, would make them so different they would come out as something completely different every 5 years. Now, there's no doubt that this was a political move by the president, President Biden, because right now, the GOP and the Democrats and the White House, well, they're all kind of in a tussle in this pretty intense negotiation over raising the debt ceiling so that the federal government can have the money that it needs to pay its bills. The Republicans, led by Kevin McCarthy, are saying that they will not vote to raise the debt ceiling until they can exact some concessions, primarily government spending cuts to federal programs, as well as entitlement programs from the Democrats. Putting that aside, though, Rick Scott, again, a Republican out of Florida, he did actually previously have a proposal that has long since lost any steam or any hope of ever becoming law that would do just this. I guess that is why it was a perfect proposal to stand up in the State of the Union for Biden, to show Biden's fortitude to not negotiate on these types of programs in order to raise the debt ceiling. The president followed this up by saying programs like Medicare and Social Security,
as we all apparently agree, Social Security and Medicare is off the books now, right? They're not to be funded.
Which was already previously said in private by Republican leader of the House, Kevin McCarthy, to Senator Joe Manchin, a Democrat who is, we'll call it very centerline. But they already said this in private, and that was a couple weeks ago. So this is not anything new. So needless to say, it is good to see that President Biden is making a stand. He's making a proclamation that he is going to protect programs and entitlements that all Americans are entitled to. But of course, it doesn't solve the problem about what can be done about maybe a program like Medicare Part A, which, according to the most recent reports, is going to be insolvent by 2028. Or even Social Security, which, according to the Social Security Trust Fund, will not be able to pay out its full monthly Social Security benefits to beneficiaries by 2035. All right, so while that drama is playing out, and basically as the country is running on borrowed time until the debt ceiling gets lifted, and I feel like we've all kind of been there, the IRS is finally getting caught up on tax returns that were submitted in 2020 that were shorted an average of $1,232 per person, or a whopping totality of $14.8 billion. So, although some people are calling it a stimulus check, and of course they are, it is not really a stimulus check. But what it is excess tax money that is due to folks who received unemployment benefits in 2020. The reason being is that for the most part, unemployment benefits are taxable, but under the pandemic legislation of the American Rescue Plan, which passed on March 11th, 2021, it had provisions in it that would allow for up to $10,200 of unemployment benefits to not be taxed as long as your household income was less than $150,000 a year. And this was to try to do basically everything possible to get more money into the hands of middle and lower income Americans who at the time, if we all recall, really needed it and probably still do. But because it passed after around 14 million Americans had already filed their taxes for 2020, including the incorrect calculations for their unemployment benefits, those folks ended up getting shorted, again, an average of $1,232 that was due to them. So now, here we are in 2023, and the IRS is finally catching up and getting that backlog unjammed and reviewing all those cases. And it's starting to send out these additional refunds from 2020 via paper checks, as well as tax credit on this year's taxes for those folks who qualify. It also means that if you think you should have received extra tax credit because you had unemployment in 2020 and you filed taxes before the American Rescue Plan was passed, then you may need to file an amended 2020 tax so you can get that extra money back. Now, last for today is a bit of a sticky situation here in the Golden State and many other states that had state-specific stimulus checks, where the governor, a guy who on a long enough timeline is going to run for president, that is Governor Gavin Newsom, he had passed legislation last year that would provide additional help for middle-class Californians, and this was a legit stimulus check called the Middle Class Tax Refund, a title that knows no sense of circumspect at all. But it was meant to help Californians pay for the huge sudden increase in inflation and the cost of gas that we had here, especially in lieu of cutting California's sizable gas taxes. Since it was a real stimulus check, it basically sent out checks running from as low as $200 all the way up to $1,050 to California residents to help them pay their bills. But now, as the tax man cometh, the answer as to whether or not these checks are taxable on the federal level, well, it's still on hold. And it's part of the reason the IRS is telling taxpayers to hold on, just take a breath and don't file your taxes just yet. Or because really it could end up being a similar situation that we just talked about with the unemployment tax overpayment all over again. Because even though these state stimulus checks may not be taxable at the state level here in California or some of the other ones that also had it, the IRS is still scratching their heads as to whether or not it is going to be taxable at the federal level or not. So overall, when we look at how things are going, in kind of a weird way, it does seem like we are all starting to put the pandemic behind us, and the last of the accounting that needed to be done and to happen is all getting done. And it's all making sure that the extra support people were promised is getting sent out to them, and all's well that ends well, right? Even if it is kind of getting late. As far as President Biden's State of the Union speech, I think it was a bit of a low blow, at least in the way that it was executed. Essentially bringing up a dead Republican proposal and then propping it up as a punching bag is sort of, a cheap trick, which, by the way, is a great band. But also the Republicans going down this road to start off with and talking about trying to make cuts to potentially the most popular social program in history, at least since bread and circuses, they really have set themselves up for it. But ultimately, when we look at this whole thing from a grand scale, the problem is that in the end, as it sits, both sides, Republicans and Democrats, they got their political talking points in, but it doesn't seem like we were actually any closer to either having Medicare or the Social Security problems of insolvency being fixed. All right, so that's it for today, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, if you found it interesting, if you found it helpful, hey, if you found it useful, please don't forget to like and subscribe. That way you can get updates when our newest and most informative videos get put up. So, for Michael's Matters, I'm Michael, hoping that you take care of yourself, take care of others, and have a happy, healthy